But I also learned that when life sucks you under, you can kick against the bottom, find the surface, and breathe again. It's so counterintuitive because you would think that if you're trying to recover from hardship or tragedy, you should think positive thoughts. But actually thinking about what things could be worse helps us see what's still good in our life and what we can be grateful for. It's not just forgiving yourself when it wasn't your fault. It's forgiving yourself when it was. Self-compassion turns out to be hugely important for recovery.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like 9 and 9. For my top 10, top 10, 9 and 9. This one's for my top 10.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with the Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and this channel was created to help you overcome the #1 challenge that is holding you back, a lack of belief in yourself. You watch these videos because you know there's something more inside you too. You have Michael Jordan level talent at something. So get ready to choose joy, have self-compassion, and believe with Sheryl Sandberg and my take on her top 10 rules of success to give you the confidence, motivation, and belief that you need. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Have a short run plan.
What I said is that when I graduated from college, Mark Zuckerberg was in elementary school. And the lesson you draw from that, and I really mean this so deeply, is like, 2 career thoughts. One is do not try to draw a straight line. And the second is find the rocket ship that matters to you. Hi, Deb, sorry. On the first, and what really matters here is if you try to plan out your career, anyone who thinks you know exactly what you're going to do for the next 30 years, here's what I promise, or 40 years, it's going to be boring and you're going to miss all the good stuff because all the good stuff hasn't been invented yet. The thing that's really going to change the world, you don't yet know what it was. And so if I had mapped out my career, Mark was in elementary school and there was no internet.
Right.
There's no internet when I graduated from college. And so I tell people, you want to have a really long run dream and you want to have a short run plan. And that short run plan, and it's important, it's not about what you accomplish, especially in the early days. It's about what you help other people accomplish and about what you learn.
Rule number 2, choose joy and meaning.
I've not spoken about this publicly before, and it's hard, but I promise not to blow my nose on this beautiful Berkeley rose. One year and 13 days ago, I lost my husband, Dave. His death was sudden and unexpected. We were in Mexico celebrating a friend's 50th birthday party. I took a nap. He went to work out. What followed was the unthinkable. I walked into a gym to find him lying on the floor. I flew home to tell my children that their father was gone. I watched his casket being lowered into the ground. For many months afterwards, and at many times since, I was swallowed in the deep fog of grief, what I think of as the void, an emptiness that fills your heart and your lungs, constricts your ability to think or even to breathe. Dave's death changed me in very profound ways. I learned about the depths of sadness and the brutality of loss. But I also learned that when life sucks you under, you can kick against the bottom, find the surface, and breathe again. I learned that in the face of the void, or in the face of any challenge, you can choose joy and meaning.
Rule number 3, be honest.
As you open yourself up to possibility, the most important thing I can tell you today is to open yourself up to honesty, to telling the truth to each other, to being honest with yourselves, and to being honest about the world we live in. If you watch children, you will immediately notice how honest they are. My friend Betsy was pregnant, and her son, we're their second child, her son Sam was 5. He wanted to know where the baby was in her body. So he asked Mommy, are the baby's arms in your arms? And she said, no, Sam, baby's in my tummy, whole baby. Mom, are the baby's legs in your legs? No, Sam, whole baby's in my tummy. Then Mommy, what's growing in your butt? As adults, we are almost never this honest, and that can be a very good thing. When I was pregnant with our first child, I asked my husband, Dave, if my butt was getting big. At first he didn't answer, but I pressed, so he said, yeah, a little. For years, my sister-in-law said about him what people will now say about you for the rest of your life when you do something dumb. And that guy went to Harvard. Hearing the truth at different times along the way would have helped me. I would not have admitted it easily when I sat where you sit. But when I graduated, I was much more worried about my love life than my career. I thought I only had a few years, very limited time, to find one of the good guys before before they were all taken or I got too old. So I moved to DC, I met a good guy, and I got married at the nearly decrepit age of 24. I married a wonderful man, but I had no business making that kind of commitment. I didn't know who I was or who I wanted to be. My marriage fell apart within a year, something that was really embarrassing and painful at the time. And it did not help that so many friends came up to me and said, I never knew that, never thought that was gonna work, or I knew you two weren't right for each other. No one had managed to say anything like that to me before I marched down an aisle when it would have been far more useful. And as I lived through those painful months of separation and divorce, boy, did I wish they had.
Rule number 4, have self-compassion.
As we've done the resilience research, and I've learned from such great research Adam's done, it's not just forgiving yourself when it wasn't your fault. It's forgiving yourself when it was. Self-compassion turns out to be hugely important for recovery. We formed optionb.org and we put this TED Talk up. It's by this woman, and she has a story of another woman who got divorced, and a while after that was going on her first date, and she was all excited. And she gets dressed up, she goes, and the guy leaves after 10 minutes. And then, as she tells the story, she says, the friend said to her, you know, you're unattractive and boring. Of course he left. Right, there's the gasp, right? But a friend didn't say that to her. She said it to herself. A friend would never say the things we say to ourselves. Our friends are usually so much nicer than we are to ourselves. And finding self-compassion, there are tragedies that happen that are people's fault. And Adam and I on purpose included them in this book. And those people have to forgive themselves too. And that doesn't mean anything anyone does is okay and there's not real responsibility and there shouldn't be real punishment. That's not what we're saying. But what we're saying is when things happen, we have to find self-compassion. Speak to ourselves as we would to a friend. And men and women do this more, but we speak to ourselves much more meanly than we would ever to a friend.
Also, if you want to learn from other successful women leaders, check out my 254 Girl Boss series. It's free. The link to join is in the description below.
You might want to get honest with yourself. Like, instead of doing this I don't want to be a millionaire, I want to do this. Do you really? Because you can make it happen. You actually can. Look at all the idiots that are making money. You can make money.
First of all, you got to be open to taking some risks and not being afraid to fail.
When I was selling copiers door to door, I had a very clear vision of what my life was going to be like.
Rule number 5, find your rocket ship.
I was at the Treasury. I didn't really ever think I'd live in California, but from the point of view of the US Treasury, all the exciting stuff was happening out here in these companies that didn't exist. And so I wanted to work in Silicon Valley. But it was actually hard. It was 2001. Lots of people said I would never hire anyone like you to my face. There was a huge bust. The first tech bubble had just burst. And so it was actually hard to get a job. And when I finally got one at Google, it felt like the wrong job. I had a spreadsheet. Some of you have those. It had my criteria for my jobs. And the problem with the Google job is, other than loving the company, it met none of the criteria. I was a business unit general manager, but I'm not that dumb. There were no business units. So that job title didn't mean anything. It was also a couple levels lower than other job offers I had elsewhere. And Eric did, he put his hand on my little spreadsheet when I showed him my criteria and how Google met none of it except that I loved the company, and said, you love the mission. This is a rocket ship. When you get offered a seat on the rocket ship, you don't ask what seat. And this is one of the most common career mistakes I see people make all the time. All of someone coming out of government or someone who's in legal or someone who's in marketing and they want to change careers. They want to move from marketing to sales. It's not hard, maybe it's not a good example. From legal to marketing or from politics or industries. And then you'll say, okay, we're willing to take a chance on you. You'll start here. And they're like, but that's 3 levels lower or 2 years behind. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, if you're going to work for the next 40 years, why do you care? Get yourself. And the job I took at Google and the job I took at Facebook were more junior than every other job offer I had.
Right.
But they turned out to be much bigger opportunities.
Rule number 6, be grateful.
I remember just a couple of weeks after Dave passed away, we were sitting in your family room with your mom, and I told you that you should imagine how this could be worse.
So you all know this, Adam's one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. But when he said that, I looked at him like he was absolutely insane, right? I mean, how it could be worse? I just lost my husband, like suddenly with no warning. And he said, well, Dave could have had that same cardiac arrhythmia driving your children. And that happens, it happens to people. And the minute he said it, I was like, I'm good. Kids are alive, I'm fine. Right? I mean, that thought, I could have lost all 3 of them. And it's so counterintuitive because you would think that if you're trying to recover from hardship or tragedy, you should think positive thoughts. But actually thinking about what things could be worse helps us see what's still good in our life and what we can be grateful for. And it is the great irony of this journey for me and really studying resilience with Adam and Adam's brilliance to this, which is that you can come out of this, obviously lingering sadness, lingering grief, but more grateful. I am more grateful today than I was 2 years ago. More grateful for the gift of life itself. Something I just completely took for granted. It never occurred to me Dave wouldn't turn 48. God willing, I turn 48 in August. And my God, will that birthday mean a lot to me, just like 47 did. Just like every birthday everyone around me has. How many people have made a joke, oh, I'm turning, I guess, 20. I'm getting old. Come on, how many people have made an I'm getting old joke? If I can give you one thing today, don't do that. And I'm not joking, don't do that. My cousin Laura turned 50 2 months ago, and I called her and said, happy birthday. And I bet you woke up this morning with that, oh my God, I'm 50 thing. This is the year Dave doesn't turn 50. There are only 2 choices. We grow older, we don't. And if we do, it is a gift. And just appreciating that is what we talk about in the book, and Adam taught me, is post-traumatic growth. It is the things where you go through hardship that make your life better.
Rule number 7, look on the bright side.
You know that song, Everything is Awesome? This is the flip. Everything is awful. There's nowhere to hide from the all-consuming sadness. The child psychologist I spoke to encouraged me to get my children back to their routine as quickly as possible. So 10 days after Dave died, my kids went back to school and I went back to work. I remember sitting in my first Facebook meeting in a total haze, thinking, what is everyone talking about and how could this possibly matter? And then I got drawn into the conversation, and for a second, the briefest of all seconds, I forgot about death. That second helped me see that there were other things in my life that were not awful. My children and I were healthy. My friends and family, some of whom are with me today, were carrying us, quite literally.
Rule number 8, build long-lasting relationships.
What advice could you offer to us, those of us who find ourselves in a non-founding leadership position, about respecting the founder's culture while also making your own impact?
So there are a lot of founder-driven companies out here. There are elsewhere. But I think it's broader than that. I think the lesson is about how do you build the relationships at work that are going to last. And it turns out it's immensely similar to building relationships at home. You know what matters? Relationships in your friendship. What matters is that you care about the other people. You have aligned goals, right? When you've had friends, think about friendships in your life. We've all had this, where you've had friends that you kind of wanted the same things and you stayed good friends for a long time, or a boyfriend or girlfriend. And sometimes that doesn't work, but if you want the same things, and then you're willing to care about the person and really know the person, you can make it work. Probably the best advice I got from this was from Dave, my husband, when I was interviewing with Mark. Mark and I actually had a lot of stuff it's not that we didn't agree, it's that we couldn't figure it out. What was gonna be Facebook's business model? You know, what were we gonna do on these things? And what Dave said to me is he said, don't even bother sorting out the substance before you take the job, because all you'll have done is sorted out today's substance, and it'll all change. What you need to sort out before you take the job is the process. Can you and Mark disagree on something and work it out? Can you convince him of something he didn't believe? And does he convince you an awful lot of things he believes, because a lot of the stuff's gonna go his way?
Right.
Pay attention to the process. And we spent a couple months really spending a lot of time together. And in that time, I learned a lot. And he convinced me of lots of things I hadn't thought of before. And there were 1 or 2 times when I convinced him and I watched him accept my point of view. And then on the way in, I didn't ask him for anything except a commitment to the process of our relationship.
Right.
So all I asked for was we'd sit together. We would always have meetings. So we agreed we'd have the first meeting of the week and the last meeting of the week, just the 2 of us. And I asked him, he would always give me feedback once a week. And he jumped in and said, as long as you give me feedback once a week. And that was when I took the job, was when he said that. So paying attention to the process by which you're gonna work with someone on the way into a job, along with values alignment of what the purpose of the company is, I think is the most important thing you can do.
Rule number 9, believe.
Studies show that getting past personalization can make us stronger. Teachers who have students who fail, who believe they can do better, revisit their methods and have future classes that excel. College swimmers who underperform in a race but believe they can do better, do. Not taking failures personally allows us to recover and even to thrive.
And rule number 10, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is help others.
Adam's joke that there's a whole section of self-help books, but there's no help other section. Help others section. We want our book and what we're doing with optionb.org to be in the help others section. And I realized I got a lot of this wrong before. Before I lost Dave, if someone was going through something hard, I would mention it the first time, maybe. I'm so sorry. And then I would never bring it up again, because if they wanted to talk, they should tell me and I didn't want to remind them. That's ludicrous. You can't remind me I lost Dave. I know that. And you can't remind someone she went for chemotherapy this morning. You can't remind someone that his dad just went to jail. They know. And I'm not saying that every person will want to talk every time, but you can always acknowledge and always ask. I know you're suffering. I'm here if you want to talk. The other thing I learned was the power of not just offering to do anything, but doing something. Again, another thing I got wrong. I've said to many people, just let me know if there's anything I can do. And I meant that really kindly. I was coming from a good place, but the problem is when people said that to me, it shifts the burden to the person who needs the help to answer the question. And what do you say? Well, can you make Father's Day disappear so I don't have to live through it? Do something. My dear friends Dan and Esther Levy tragically lost a child, and they were in the hospital for many months. And a friend of his texted and said, what do you not want on a burger? A friend of mine read this book 2 weeks ago. Before it came out, I gave it to her. And she has a not close friend who has a child with leukemia, and they went back into the hospital. And she said before she read the book, she would have done nothing because she's not her best friend. How dare she impose? They're in the hospital with leukemia, but she read the book. So she went to the toy store, she bought a stuffed animal, she went to the hospital lobby, and she texted and said, I'm in the lobby in case you want this or you want to come down, but I'm leaving in 15 minutes. And the woman texted right away and said, please come up. And she gave the stuffed animal to the 4-year-old, and she said the mother was standing behind her crying, mouthing the words, thank you for showing up. You don't have to be someone's best friend from the first grade to show up with a burger. You don't. And you don't have to be someone's best friend to mention this. Asking is always right. It won't be the right thing to show up in all circumstances, but a lot more showing up and a lot more acknowledging would help a lot of people.
Now I have a special bonus clip from Sheryl on how to ask for the truth that I think you're gonna enjoy. But before that, it's time for the 3-point landing questions. Let's go from just watching a video to taking action. Here we go. Question number 1, who can you help this week? Number 2, where do you need to look on the bright side? And number 3, what are 3 things you can be grateful for today? And if you made it this far in the video, I wanna celebrate you too. Give me a hashtag believe down in the comments as well.
I know how hard it can be to be honest with each other, even your closest friends, even when they're about to make serious mistakes. But I bet sitting here today, you know your closest friends' strengths, weaknesses, what cliff they might drive off. And I bet for the most part, you've never told them. And they've never asked. Ask them. Ask them for the truth because it will help you. And when they answer honestly, know that that's what makes them real friends. Asking for feedback is a really important habit to get into as you leave the structure of the school calendar and exams and grades behind. On many jobs, if you want to know how you're doing, you're going to have to ask, and then you're going to have to listen without getting defensive. Take it from me, listening to criticism is never fun, but it's the only way we can improve. A few years ago, Mark Zuckerberg decided he wanted to learn Chinese. And in order to practice, he started trying to have work meetings with some of our Facebook colleagues who are native speakers. Now, you would think his very limited language skills would keep these conversations from being useful. One day he asked a woman who was there how it was going, how did she like Facebook? She answered with a long and pretty complicated sentence. So he said, simpler please. She spoke again. Simpler please. This went back and forth a couple of times till she just blurted out in frustration, "My manager is bad." That he understood. So often the truth is sacrificed to conflict avoidance, or by the time we speak the truth, we've used so many caveats and preambles that the message totally gets lost. So as you ask each other for the truth and other people, can you elicit it in simple and clear language? And when you speak your truth, can you use simple and clear language?
If you want to see the top 10 I did on Mark Zuckerberg, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
I think people ask, what mistakes should you avoid making? And my answer to that question is don't even bother trying to avoid mistakes because you're going to make tons of mistakes.